The superpower is thinking.
Someone asked me to complete the sentence I wanted to be. And I am, I return wholeheartedly.
The secret tools, research. The weapons of mass destruction, multimedia, words, images, music, visual mapping, graphics, sound, video. From the cross currents of mass culture, mass communications, mass education, she traverses 5 continents and 3 realms. Her quest?
Find a place where knowledge lives, even if we all cease to be.
She'll use the important dark forces who have a warrant out for her arrest on the crime of reading. Mystical beings of science and science with potent powers to heal, befriend her. Confronted walls of prejudice and pollution, racism, vitriol and violence, turmoil and terrorism, she defies the poet's claims.
No man is an island, but woman is. Spokesperson for woman, the empowered kind. I land in the wars of the world. Choose us or them, heart or mind.
She meanders secretive and treacherous contortions in her heart's arteries to unearth historical distortions. Inspired by Pa's dream stories, with Ma as her muse,
The wealth is a mind.
she sets out on a perilous journey in search of the magical flower with the power to restore sight to the world, and invents a new creative genre, the multimedia micro-epic of the Anthropocene.
Split into continents, cut up in parts, divided in vain, says the laureate, long before the medical probes find the evidence. My umbilical motherland,
One is in the east and one is in the west.
buried, hidden, invisible, unknown, unseen, asymptomatic, separated from mother continent. I am an island, the independent kind, an Amazonian, descendant of the first Americaners, ancestors of ancient Pacific Atlantic crisscrossings of discovery long before Kon-Tiki.
I have never been able to contemplate the history of my islands as the isolated story of independence or colonization or even migration, not the recent migrations that brought most of us here, nor even the prehistoric ones. I have pored over maps and drew the invisible line that connects South American rivers and topography with our islands, and looked at biological studies of our flora and fauna, and geological and anthropological and archaeological reports, and even without that, knowing their primordial linkages which we have been taught to forget. To move beyond the self-derision and self-deprecation and discover our ugliness too, and our beauty too, as I trace the imaginary line that connects us, island and continent. This is a liturgy, a praise to all who came before, and on whose shoulders we stand and are growth.
Heritage in itself is a voyage of discovery. The occasion we are celebrating this month, Indian Heritage Month, of the modern wave of migration that brought a stream of laborers from India to the Western Hemisphere, is one such voyage of discovery, of daring. When we celebrate arrival, we celebrate the bravery of crossing over to the unknown. We celebrate the spirit of triumph over adversity. We celebrate the founders and the builders of a society. The journey to reclaiming his place in the world for migrant Indians and his descendants begin from the time he begins to bond with other immigrants on the ship. They sing the first line of a verse from the Ramayana on the treacherous seas. That line is picked up by the man sitting next to him, and the woman next to that man, and the child on the woman's lap. And in these elements of internalized culture and tradition that are part of the cargo of those immigrant ships, borne thousands of miles across the oceans and deposited in a new place to seed and to take root. Let's imagine what it might have been in the beginning when our ancestors set foot on these shores. In the beginning, it would have begun with one time-expired Indian. From nearby trees, he cuts posts to hold together his one-room house, with carrot leaves for a roof and bamboo and grass pasted over with mud, packed and hardened to form the walls of his home. Its dirt floor he leaps with his hands using cow dung and water mixed into a paste. It is cool underfoot and helps keep off the insects. Home is the axis of his trek to and from the fields. His bare callous feet hardened, its skin peeling white and dried, stamped down towering grasses to reveal a pathway that would one day become a roadway that may even carry his name. Suknanan, Ramlochan, Visasa, Sukub and Wari or Ramaitres, a road is named. With time, others acquire similar plots, set up huts, and plant the fields next to him. He takes one as his wife. With others around them, they grow families. A village is born. They create an outdoor shrine under a mango or peepal tree or immortal tree. The shrine becomes the place where they teach the young their ancestral language, religion, culture, beliefs and practices. It becomes their meeting place, not only to pray, but to exchange ideas, to expound philosophies about existence, the world, religion, the day in the fields, the weather, problems of survival, plans for their future, their place in this new place. It becomes the center of social transformation. A community takes root. They meet with other groups at each other's shrines, and the discussions broaden as they recognize common interests and common concerns. They develop networks, first to sing bhajans and Ramayan in villages where such groups do not exist, or to share instruments and music and musicians, then to teach others bhajan singing, Ramayan recitation, dance and language, and to discuss social and political concerns. Nationalism blossoms. They organize cultural competitions and contests like Chautal singing competitions around holy time and Jal Ramayan competitions near Diwali time and Ramlila. Singers and dancers and musicians of one village try to outdo the other. These and other events would evolve into district and then one day national festivals, Ramlila and Diwali and Holi. Religion, culture, and community combine in a powerful catalyst to demand reform of social conditions and for political recognition. Recognition of their contribution to the place, not as temporary contract workers, but as citizens who have peopled this earth and this sea and this sky with their gods and goddesses, whose navel strings are buried in this land, and who have buried the navel strings of their children in sacred spots on land they have watered with tears and nourished with sweat and sustained with humiliation and pain and degradation, who have planted in this land their faith and hopes and dreams, loftily fluttering like colorful jundies in the wind. The process I outlined of society formation there has been part of my studies in finding a place, and subsequently documented too in multiple choice. It gathers together information about our role in forming a society that is generally erased in discussion and in the written and educational forms of documentation of the culture. For instance, I see you, the Arya Samaj movement, is celebrating what you call your 70th anniversary in education. But those 70 years only mark the beginning of registering your formal institution. In giving emphasis to the date of formal registration and recognition and acknowledgement from the colonial processes, we are in effect erasing the history of struggle and endeavor that predates all of that, all that went before the point of registration. It erases the pioneering effort, the charity, the freely giving of time and energy of men and women in the communities to keep a culture alive. It erases what we call oral cultural processes, the informal processes of passing knowledge from one generation to the next. And it also discounts the value of that tradition and heritage of passing knowledge, of transmitting knowledge from one generation to the next. And so it also erases from our history books and our heritage the roots and value of the essence of our cultures. This has been the focus of my studies. When we take into consideration the oral, undocumented, intangible forms of knowledge transmission, the way we pass on knowledge from one generation to the next, it changes radically the picture of our place in development. It changes our understanding and appreciation of each other and of other groups in the society and their understanding of us. And this has been the work in Finding a Place. So in Finding a Place, while mapping the history and heritage from written sources, some very rare and little known newspapers and magazines, I also incorporated and traced how the early settlers applied and utilized the culture in their memory before they accessed the written knowledge, the songs and dances and rituals and practices, habits and beliefs, to establish themselves and settle in the society as described earlier. So what you would see here are some of the materials I encountered in the images that you see here. For example, on the Arya Samaj movement in Trinidad and Tobago. The Arya Pratindi Sabha recognized its origins in 1910 with the arrival of the first Aryan missionaries as funded by Permanent, and as I pointed out earlier, with the registering of its official organization in the 1940s. But Finding a Place takes this back much earlier, with actions that were occurring unrecognized and undocumented at community level, because at that time our community were very much invisible from the mainstream. And this is manifested in the documentation that came later, as in the little known newspapers and literary magazines. For example, in their representation and description of the visit of the Vedic missionary Pandya, which your history would tell you set the stage for formalizing education and community outreach among your groups. What was exciting and interesting to see was the way all groups, religions and races participated in each other's activities and worked together to strengthen the movement towards independence. Much of this working together we have seen have been eroded since independence. And of course, we know what caused that erosion: the politics and the scramble for constituency. It shows this in Finding a Place, that were not only among Hindus but also among Muslims and other groups, the rich intercultural exchange and fermentation that was occurring in villages. This is being wiped out by the tellings and race-based interpretations of our history and culture, and continue to be repeated and replicated in the documented forms. So how well do we know our history? How well do you know our history? You've seen from all this evidence I'm showing you about the early Arya Samaj movement in Trinidad. I've done the same for the Presbyterian and Muslims as well, of what was happening in the villages within and among these groups and our communities. If we do not know our history, how can you teach it? In the same way, it traces the process of intercultural development, the interactions of different denominations, the way Christians, Muslims, Hindus, and others work together to build a society. So there's also the evidence from the Christians, Presbyterians, Muslims, other Hindu groups treated in finding a place. I applied this knowledge to analyzing the political environment when I was working on Through the Political Glass Ceiling, mapping the pathway to the political office of the first woman Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And what I found, the picture that surfaced became very different to what we have been conditioned to believe about our Westminster adopted political system, the two-party system. Because we feel that the needs and the wants and what needs to be done and what has to be done is sometimes so overwhelming, we end up falling back into taking and borrowing and applying these misfit forms, misfit information that doesn't resound with the cultural relevance that we need for education of our children. So what we need, it means investing in resources, using our same resources, but redirecting more wisely to build capacity to develop infrastructure. And this development should begin from preschool. Our children are already tech savvy by the age of 4. So why are we waiting until age 14 to introduce them to IT? They are navigating social media by ages 3, 4, and 5. So why are we not integrating social media skills into their education? So, and this is where I'm making a link between what's happening in the informal environment and what's happening in the formal environment. The formal environment, formal education environment, is very slow and sluggish in keeping up, just as it was in terms of acknowledging and recognizing what was happening in our communities and villages in the informal system. We see the sluggishness also in terms of general education progress. We have to still retrieve the knowledge and information through research and digitize. And it places us way behind the digital age. And as we panic, what are we doing? We are now copycatting wholesale, transferring all the prejudices and biases that come with media, ingrained, internalized in how media presents information and educational material developed for and from other societies. We face the danger of going into the digital age with this deficit and imbalance in knowledge systems, and culture and our heritage. Unless we retrieve and actively participate, we will not just lose ground, we will lose valuable information, and what we are losing is that link that will enable us to connect our present and our past. In the same way, we have lost the link with colonization and with utilizing colonial interpretations of ourselves and our history and the history of our culture. We are now further distancing ourselves from understanding and retrieving that knowledge. So what can we do? Research, publication, teacher retraining, utilizing youth for peer development. I have been doing in the background some of that work, finding a place now in the process of being digitized, and a digitized form of finding a place is not a PDF. It would bring alive through visual, audio, images, the society I painted for you when I started my presentation. So digitization is not just turning things into PDF. When we talk about making it culturally relevant for intercultural education, it is ensuring that the images that are presented are properly presented. They do not reflect, they do not contain biases and prejudices that are transmitted unknown to us, to the people that we teach. So some of these experiments I would give you pretty close. So yes, digitization of finding a place and finalization of the digitization of multiple choice, which is the post-independent period and the communities and what was happening in there for release and for use by educators. Secondly, I have been also developing a new learning framework that would engage with and amalgamate and integrate our approach to arts and sciences. We have tended to adopt that colonial model in which the sciences and the arts are separated, and in separating the sciences and the arts, of course, you also distance the oral culture and that learning. So I've, in my National Geographic capstone, begun to develop a new learning framework that can amalgamate the science and arts education and bring out that what could be relevant for intercultural education. And this is based on examination. It's a blended learning model that integrates how National Geographic does its scientific education and how UNESCO does its cultural education. So amalgamating those both into what I call story science. Another element is what I launched at Commonwealth Day at the height of COVID. A new literary genre called the multimedia microepic, where I take the classical epic and adapt it for social media, short form social media, for digital media. So whereas we think that digital education, we've been dumbing down and throwing a set of boring PDFs at children with ridiculous mascots and in PowerPoint presentations, I created the multimedia microepic as a form to amalgamate all the very complex elements of the classical epic for social media.
I wish you happy reflections on this day and look forward to working together to forge a pathway forward. I thank you.
Chalo habari sat Haguria chalo habari sat Kalakata se awe jahaz Abagala kali karo Kalakata se awe jahaz Abagala kali karo Kalakata se awe jahaz
Just follow me and you will see, you and me, it's so good to be footloose and free. I wander around through countries, seaside and town. Come with me, come on, see what's done, still to be done. The world is my playground. and truth, love and freedom. I visit all, but still with none for long.